Welcome to a new episode of Mind Your Mind, the podcast especially dedicated to frontline workers around the world, hoping that you will get motivated and encouraged to initiate your personally meaningful self-care strategy to make your work life a little bit longer and satisfying. Today, I have the pleasure to be with Max Dalda Müller. He's a counselor. Since 2011, he started his career in the field of addiction and recovery. And in 2013, he was invited to teach counseling and mental health awareness at Bridgewater Taunton College. And he has been the program manager for core counseling training there since 2019. He also lectures in integrative counseling at Iron Mill College in Exeter, here in the UK. Max, welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me, Roxana. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am super fascinated about the conversation that we are about to have, because you bring into this equation a very interesting topic for me. It sounds like we will be talking in codes because we will be talking about Black Mirror. And so first of all, can you please tell us what Black Mirror is? And then we can get on with the rest of our conversation. Welcome and thank you for being here.
And thank you for having me again. So Black Mirror, I don't want to steal the name from Charlie Brooker's amazing Netflix series, which I recommend watching, but that was kind of inspired the name. I see Black Mirror because we have these devices that we all have that that do kind of, in a sense, reflect ourselves. They're black and they tend to reflect ourselves, not just our image, but actually who we are, because it's designed by us. So Black Mirror was something that emerged in about 2016, 2017. I've noticed in my private practice as a counselor, as well as working with young students at the college, I was doing emotional literacy classes for teenagers. I've noticed this something coming into the conversation that wasn't there before around people's relationship with technology and especially with social media. I had these conversations where people would say things such as, I look at Instagram and I feel really inadequate, or I have fallen out with somebody over a text message, or I can't stop myself from checking my Facebook and things like this, or I can't sleep, I'm always checking my phone. So this kind of came into the conversation, and I noticed myself sometimes saying to people things such as, hey, if you think that your phone and social media is causing you a problem, why don't you cut it down or give it up or get rid of your phone? And there was a distinct look in people's faces. They looked at me. They looked at me as if I was crazy. And I remember seeing that when I used to work in the addictions field, sometimes I would suggest to somebody that maybe they ought to stop drinking so much alcohol or stop smoking crack. It was a very similar look. I recognized that look. And then I thought, and then that gave me pause for thought. So why do people react so strongly? What am I asking for people to do? People would say things, oh, but I need it. It's my alarm, it's my banking, my this, I need it for this, I need it for that. And then I thought, okay, what is it? What am I, when I say that, what am I asking from a person? So I said, okay, I'm going to try to see what that is like. So what I did in I think it was in 2018, I embarked on a heuristic inquiry, which is a form of research, me-search, actually I say all research is me-search, but we involves actually throwing ourselves into an experience and just recording our own process and thoughts. So what I did was I decided to, I swapped my iPhone for one of these, Nokia 3310, which only has text, calls, and Snake. You can play Snake, and the battery lasts a week. What I did is I logged out of all social media, all news media, basically cut my technology use to its bare minimum, where the only access to technology that I had was through my work computer, emails, and things that were relevant to my work. I cut out everything else. And I did that for a month. For a whole month.
For a month, okay.
Yes. And it was the intention was to kind of find out what that was like to live in this world without a smartphone, without social media, without news media, without Netflix, without streaming, without Spotify, without SatNav on my phone. You know, what was that like? And I embarked in it, and I admit the first few days were quite tricky. I noticed myself doing things like, being very easily distracted, looking for something all the time. I
Mm-hmm.
kept on thinking that my phone was going off in my pocket. I kept actually thinking that my phone was vibrating, but it wasn't.
The sensation, the physical sensation of your phone vibrating.
Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
this actually apparently has a name. It's called phantom vibration syndrome.
Uh-huh.
And it's in the same way that when people have got a limb
Mm.
amputated, they may
Yes.
feel that they still have an itch or pain in a limb that is no longer there. So it kind of felt a bit like that, you know. So, but then over the days, what happened was I started like noticing other things a lot more. For example, I noticed that I started sleeping better. My days were longer. I seemed to have more time to do things
Mm.
magically. I also found myself that the engagement that I had in conversations, in relationships, in connection with people was very different, was a lot more personal. I found myself doing things instead of sending an email to a colleague, I would just walk to their office and walk in and talk to them. I noticed myself noticing things more, feeling a lot more present. What I had was a sense of being present and being mindful. And there were some things that were difficult. For example, I really did miss having music in my car for Spotify, so I had to play CDs.
Mm-hmm.
I really, remember buying the newspaper. Uh, for example, I did miss WhatsApp a little bit. I remember I have a group of friends that we get together on a Wednesday, and on a Wednesday it's a WhatsApp group. We start sending messages. Who's coming out tonight, and this and that, um, and I wasn't part of this group for that period. So what I had to do is actually on the Wednesday, I had to risk going to the pub and seeing that
Okay.
they were there.
If they were there.
Of course they were there. Where else are they going to be? But then I thought, actually, this is what I used to do when I was young in the 80s and 90s. We didn't have all these things. We just went to a place and hoped our friends were there. So
Yes, you had this point of contact, and it's so interesting all what you're mentioning already because you're talking about sleep and pattern,
yeah,
our presence, how
yes,
present we are in the day to day, the different sort of kind of connection with
mm,
other people, and the change in terms of the way that we manage relationships as well.
yes,
All of these elements are related as well with the quality of our well-being
yeah,
and are connected with burnout as well. If we don't
yes,
have a good sleep pattern, we are more prone to develop more issues with our well-being in general, physical health, mental health, and including burnout. And so it's so interesting how
mm,
there is this connection here, no? And I'm
yeah,
finding that your findings, that what you were discovering with your research, was already giving you something that makes me think about
yeah,
how useful this
mm,
information can be to understand better how are we actually relating to our social media, and how that may or may not have
mm.
an implication in the way that we are feeling.
Yes, totally. And I remember one of the things when I actually finished the detox after the month, um, I remember going back to technology was actually okay because for the sun I had sat nav, there were certain things. But going back to social media, I remember feeling incredibly anxious about it.
Uh-huh.
Almost like actually there was a part of me that didn't want to do this, but I thought I need to go back to see what that's like. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've noticed is it really kind of it changed my relationship with social media completely. I felt whereas before I kind of to some degree felt like I had no choice. I was almost like quite reactive to it, quite like I had to check it all the time. There was almost impulsive. I
Mm.
felt it kind of gave me back an element of choice, and it shifted my relationship to a point where I felt that I had a healthier relationship, a bit like with food kind of thing, like I had
Yes.
a better digital diet, as it were. But
Uh-huh.
then this project actually this idea. Then I decided I did some talks. Actually, I took this to Glastonbury Festival. I went to Ireland with it. It became like a project. And
Uh-huh.
at that time, one thing that I reflected on was that this was my experience for somebody born in the 1970s that grew up without
Uh-huh.
technologies. I mean, when I was a kid, the phone had a lock in it. We had to ask permission to use the phone to phone our grandmother. It was a very different environment. The TV had 3 channels. We had no social media or internet. So for me, it was kind of easier to revert to an earlier version of myself, as it were, because I am
Mm-hmm.
what is called a digital immigrant. I'm not a digital native. Okay, whereas I wonder what it was like, what it would have been like for people that were born with the technology and always knew it.
Exactly. Yes, exactly
Yeah,
what I was thinking while you were talking
yeah,
about this, because for us, it's like we do have the memory of
yeah,
ourselves
yeah,
being in a different environment. As you were saying, for example, this idea of just going to a place where you know your friends hang up,
yeah, yeah,
and finding out who you will find there, and
yes.
that's it. That was something to do, and we knew, and we have been comfortable doing that. It's something that's been familiar to us. But yeah, what happened with those that have not had those experiences when younger?
So what happened then was actually, this was around, I was actually looking into doing that, increasing the research project to involve other people. But then obviously around that time, COVID happened.
Uh-huh.
And now COVID completely turbocharged our relationship with technology, social
Definitely.
media, and I mean the fact that we are doing this on Zoom, this is
Exactly.
kind of something
It's
that we
a,
probably wouldn't have done. So it is actually almost 5 years to the day.
yes.
Sometimes I think it's maybe a bit of pause for reflection. Sometimes I wonder, did that really happen? Did we actually
Mm.
go through all of that? And that completely, one is it changed my availability to do a research project, but it also changed and completely shifted our relationship with technology. It became a lot more necessary working from home, having Teams and Zoom meetings. It just became, I mean, as therapists, we know this, that I was actually doing therapy online from 2013. My mother she's passed away since. She was unwell and she was in Spain, and I had to often go and visit her, and I couldn't stop seeing clients, so I would move sessions to Skype, which actually
Yes, I
got cancelled
remember.
the other day. Actually, it has been discontinued, no longer
Oh,
exists.
really?
I
Okay.
thought, that's
Wow,
it.
that's amazing. I was
Yeah,
thinking about that as well the other day
yeah,
because I was doing as well some
yeah,
clinical supervisions and some work
yeah,
online before the pandemic. And it
yeah,
was very rare, really,
yeah,
using Skype. And now 95% of my
yeah,
practice happens online.
yeah. I remember all the therapy saying to me, but
Incredible.
it's not therapy. It's not really, it's not the
Yes,
same thing. And actually, I've done some of my best work online, and ultimately
same
it is
here.
about the connection, the relationship, and and all of that, and that counts. But yeah, so coming away from that, sort of that shifted my relationship. It really gave me, and actually seeing what happened during COVID and sort of how people live their lives in social media, I became
Yes.
quite aware of actually the impact that it has on our society.
Mm-hmm.
It has had, and it is having on our society, especially on young people, especially on those people that have never known anything else. I admit that I am concerned as a parent. I'm concerned about my children's relationship with social media and what
Mm-hmm.
they see and what they're exposed to online.
Mm.
It's and there's a lot of factors around that, but yeah, I think it's something that we really need to think, both our relationship on a personal level, our individual relationship with this, but I think also our social and cultural relationship with technology and social media.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how that has also become part of parenting,
Yeah,
part of the way that we relate to our children as well, and so
yeah,
on. No, is as you say, that cultural element, that social element that it is so present, and how much that is impacting and creating new habits that
yeah,
that weren't there before.
yeah.
It's a
When I
big
did my
question
training,
mark for the future, no?
yes, when I did my training, I remember watching the video of this is Edward Tronic's video of the still face experiment, where a mother
Yes,
suddenly closes her face to a child, and the child immediately becomes quite distressed. And one thing that I've noticed with that actually is that this is what we kind of is happening with our children. If I go to
absolutely.
a play area, I've got a 6-year-old stepdaughter in my life, and sometimes I go and see her play in a play area, and sometimes I look at other parents, and what I notice is the children are playing and the parents are on their mobile phones.
Uh-huh.
So in a sense, they're kind of doing this constant not engaging. And actually, and the child kind of sometimes will vie for attention, and they say, "Look at me, look at what I'm doing," and then they look at it, and then they will pick up their phone and record it. So it is kind of, in a
Uh-huh.
sense, mediating our interaction with our children, and there's something really valuable about putting the phone away and just engaging with a child, you know, uh,
That face to
getting
face, eye
messy,
to
yeah,
eye,
yeah, yeah,
yes,
yeah. Read them
getting
a
dirty,
story,
yes.
I was doing face painting last night, and
Uh-huh.
that kind of classical traditional play.
It's engaging in play. And we do have a very interesting episode around play as
Yes.
well with Portia Tung. And she was telling us a lot about how to use play as well to take care of ourselves as
Yeah.
adults, and how do we incorporate play not only for connecting with our young ones in our life,
Yeah.
but also
Mhm.
with ourselves in so many ways. So
But it
what
may
is
be,
the
it may be interesting to reflect that actually
yeah
young people,
uh-huh
we see an epidemic of mental health problems in young people that actually is the one part of the population where problems are really increasing. So people that are now in their 16 to 18-year-old, they're having a lot of mental health problems. 17 years ago, the iPhone was first came about.
yes
And actually just the effect that that has had, and actually are we starting to see the effects of all of that in our young people? Just wanted to add that there. Sorry, you were asking a
Yeah,
question.
no, but very important, to bear in mind. I mean, I think we have been a part of this change in history,
Yeah.
in how technology has become part of our
Mhm.
life in such quick way as well.
Yeah.
And now, as you say, we are starting to see the consequences, but also
Mhm.
how open we are to look at that.
Yeah.
And bear in mind that it's not only affecting our children, but it's also affecting us. And
Yeah.
although it plays an important part in our day-to-day, for some of us like you and me as well
Mm.
in work, and for
Yeah.
so many other frontline workers as well, it is important to bear in mind what you were saying, I think, around choice and
Mhm.
that element of control, knowing that you
Yes.
can make
Mhm.
conscious choices
Yeah.
of how do you relate to your
Yes.
social media, your technology in life. So what is the approach that you're using to do this research? Now Black Mirror is in the 2.0.
Yes, so I'm currently in the middle of the of I've got this time I'm doing a research project with other people.
Uh-huh,
currently doing a master's degree at Bath Spa Uni, and this is my dissertation project. So
uh-huh.
I have a few people doing a digital detox. What is very
Including me, by the way.
Yes, yes, yes. I didn't know if you wanted to say that, but yes, thank
Yeah,
you for
yes, of
disclosing
course.
that. Yes, we just completed it recently as well.
Yes,
So
fascinating.
yes. So the idea here is what I wanted to capture is again that experience as opposed to the experience that I had. Okay, like I was saying, I was born in the 70s, so it was kind of easier for me. But I wanted to capture the experience of other people that perhaps have got a different relationship with technology. What I'm doing is a qualitative piece of research where I'm actually
Mm-hmm,
trying to capture experience using interpretative phenomenological analysis, or IPA. So the
mm-hmm,
idea is I'm doing interviews. So I'm doing an interview before the detox, which is I've used Petruska Clarkson's 7 levels of functioning. We discuss a bit actually how the experience is our relationship with tech and social media through a physiological self,
mm-hmm.
through our emotions, through the language that we use, through our normative and cultural lens, through a cognitive lens, from the perspective of sharing and telling our story, and also perhaps through a spiritual lens as well, or transpersonal. And the idea is that we have a sort of half-hour to 1 hour conversation with people. They tell me about this, we talk, we record this, then they go away, they do the detox for 2 weeks, and then I'll interview them after, and we ask the same questions, and we just look at the narrative. And the idea in IPA is that what I will analyze is the stories that emerge, the perception that people have. So to capture the experience, what is it like? And then I will obviously put that into a piece of writing. But what I'm noticing already from the few people that have finished is that this seems to be quite a revelatory thing for people, and also that it really has gives people the main thing, pause to reflect. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I wanna bring the words of Rollo May that always often attributed to Viktor Frankl, the idea that between stimulus and response there is a space, and that if we a small space where if we insert awareness in that space,
Mm, mm, mm.
increases our ability to choose, so we don't have to react to the world, we can respond to the world. And I think that's kind of my approach to working with this: insert awareness.
Such an interesting approach, and to don't tell much about my story, because this is about talking about you and
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
experience with Black Mirror and all the fantastic work that
Yeah.
you're doing. Yes, totally, that moment to pause and
Mm-hmm.
reflect, but also use the different levels from Petruska Clarkson
Mm-hmm.
a model to actually think about oneself in different areas, no,
Mm-hmm.
in
Yes.
different ways. And that creates so much insight and so a different level of awareness as well. And
Yeah.
2 weeks, it does is pass very quickly,
Hmm.
but the process itself
Yeah.
is very deep and interesting. So yeah, I think, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything more. For sure, we will be doing
Yeah.
another episode
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
to tell everybody about the results of the
Yeah.
second part of your research and let them know, and to bring even more awareness around this. I think is really, really important. I do work with lots of people that more than once bring as well social media as
Yeah.
part of the problem sometimes. So what is that? What else can you tell us about how people can get involved in your research now? Do you need more
Well,
people? How that can happen? Is that something that we can invite people to do?
so yes, I'm actually currently because of the research I'm doing is part of a master's degree. I
Mm-hmm.
have to do it as a student, so I am limited to
Yes, on
actually
how
the
much?
subjects that I can have for my research. For example, one of the premises is that I cannot interview anybody under the age of 25.
Mm-hmm.
The reason being, and this is one of the aspects perhaps worth discussing around technology and social media, is that one of the things that especially social media does is increases our dopamine release.
Mm-hmm.
Every time we check our social media, we get a dopamine hit. And we are used to get this dopamine hit 80, 90, 100 times a day for 4 or 5 hours of the day, right? If we were to stop that very suddenly, the drop in dopamine could have consequences. It could actually create if you like, if you want to use the parlance of addiction treatment, a cold turkey. People could get withdrawal symptoms from the dopamine.
Uh-huh.
When we're working with people that are under the age of 25, their brain is still developing and forming. So
Yes.
we came to a decision with the university that it was not a good idea to do this with people under 25 when I am not, when as a student. But
Yes.
it's my intention to actually take this further, and I would be really willing to engage with other people. But I think one thing that I also want to do is actually just to take this beyond into the realm of let's have these conversations.
Mm.
Let's have this conversation around how we relate to this thing, to this meeting.
Yes.
Most of us spend, the average person spends 4 hours and 20 minutes a day on their mobile phones. Uh,
Yes, and the implications as well of what you just explained us, no,
yeah,
that not everybody is fully aware of that,
yeah,
and how that is impacting as well in the way that we are feeling with ourselves.
yeah,
Do we relate to the world? How do we
yes.
relate to our loved ones as well? So, can you tell us a little bit more about that, of the impact and those
Yeah,
effects of constant dopamine
yeah.
input in our brain? What can you tell us more about that?
Okay, so maybe with, for example, just for full disclosure, and I'm very comfortable with this. I'm a recovering addict. I had substance misuse problems in my past. Is how I ended up in this line of work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I remember when I was in the midst of the chaos of addiction and the pain was I didn't feel like I had a choice.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I didn't. I did have a choice. Of course, you always have a choice, but the choice was very, very, very difficult to see at the time. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it may be that element of what is happening with social media and
Social media.
technology is that we feel that our choice is taken away, and it's very difficult sometimes to see what we can do. Okay, so one of the things, for example, important to reflect is that the impacts that, for example, in social. Let's focus on social media. Here's
Mm-hmm.
the aspects about social media that are really um, potentially damaging to us. Okay, one of them is social currency, or the economy of attention. Okay,
Okay.
if
Mm-hmm.
you think about social media, the model of social media companies, you are a Facebook user, you are a Instagram user, you're not a customer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you can think of another profession that calls their customers users, that's drug dealers. Okay.
Mm.
So in a sense, you're not a user. People will say, because I don't pay any money for these services. So
Mm-hmm.
no, you don't pay money in cash, but what you do pay is with your data.
Your
Okay.
time as well.
Right. And your time, etc. And so what they're mining information on you and information on social groups and information on patterns and recognizing that's very valuable information for political systems, for capitalistic systems, for control, governments. It's kind of quite scary. I sound a bit conspiratorial, but there is something about that. Actually, we put all of this data and information of ourselves in the hands of a very, very few people that haven't been elected.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah. It's data. Data is what we're giving. Yeah,
It's
I hear
personal
that.
data. So
Yes.
one of the ways that the longer we stay online, the better for the companies. So in a sense, one of the things that happens is that things that capture our attention tend to be more than anything, because our autonomic nervous system is designed for survival first and foremost.
Uh-huh.
It will capture things that are either frightening or that make us angry. Okay, so outrage and fear really, really capture your attention. Okay, for example, we slow down when we see a car crash, when we don't slow down when we see a parent hugging their child in a beautiful moment. We don't slow down for that. We slow down when we see the car crash, because we are designed to do that. So social media exploits this. Okay, and they keep on sort of putting in our algorithm things that will literally piss us off or makes us scared, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is that, and that's creating a sense of something's wrong all the time. You kind of constantly in a heightened state of awareness. You kind of almost like your autonomic nervous system is on sympathetic fight or flight.
Yes.
The other side is that what we tend to see in social media is highlight reels. So we tend to see most people when they post on social media, they post the good. I went out for a meal. I went to this concert. I've been on a holiday. People
Uh-huh.
don't post. I've just been in the supermarket and my child just threw themselves on the floor and started screaming, and I felt really ashamed and embarrassed. The people don't tend to post that. So what we tend to see is people's good moments. We see the highlights of their life, which then
Uh-huh.
makes us feel inadequate, which then puts us into that dorsal vagal state of actually sort of shutting down. So we move from fight or flight to shutting down. Okay, and all of this time when we feel inadequate, we get bombarded with advertising or things that will make us feel better, because that's the kind of the premise of capitalism. They need to create a deficit for you
Mm-hmm.
to consume. Without the deficit, there is no consume. If we are satisfied, we're not going to spend money, right?
Exactly.
So this is kind of constantly happening. So constantly moving from freezing to fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
How often do we have that kind of other bit, rest and digest, social connection, eye to eye connection? Not very much on social media. Then there are other aspects about social media. There is the level of something called the online disinhibition effect, which is
Uh-huh.
people online say and do things that they wouldn't do in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up with things like trolling, shouting match, Twitter storms. I know they probably have a different name now that Twitter's no longer Twitter. This kind of discourse, it can feel like very angry, very polarized, very
Mm-hmm.
very difficult. So it's actually can be quite traumatic for people to actually be online.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other aspects, fake news. So it's all of this. So when we actually sit in the doom scrolling,
Mm-hmm.
there's all this stuff is happening in our autonomic nervous system that we're not necessarily aware of.
Not at all. Completely unaware of it. This is a very unconscious process, right?
Yes, because it's very much designed to tap into our unconscious process. It's designed that the business model of social media companies is to just to keep you looking at stuff, right?
Yes.
And then to keep you buying as well,
Mm.
and they do that to make you. So if you
Yes,
spend four
somehow
hours,
creating need as well, where there is no
exactly,
need.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So 4 hours and 20 minutes on average a day, we're doing this.
Mm.
Okay, and then it's this how it affects our cognitive ability when we get everything in sound bites, attention, sleep. Because if you're doom scrolling before you go to bed and you're kind of going from either shutdown to fight or flight 20, 30 times in 5 minutes, you're gonna go to sleep. You're gonna be walking up in the night with your brain kind of reeling, sort of as
Yes.
that's the effects that it has on people. It's kind of can be quite damaging, especially for those that are young and perhaps not equipped with the resilience and the understanding of this. You know?
Yeah, but also because works at such an unconscious levels, probably
Yeah,
we are
yeah,
having difficulties to sleep, for example,
yeah,
that we cannot explain.
yeah,
And so these kind of things, I think worth looking
yeah,
at when we are thinking about our own well-being and how we are sort of maintaining and creating that resilience, especially because for frontline workers, their day-to-day is to be
mhm,
working with the pain and the
yeah,
suffering of others, right? In different kind of circumstances.
yeah,
But if we add to that the equation of what social media brings into our
Yeah,
world,
yeah,
into our personal world, then there is something to consider there, I
yeah.
think.
Yes, I mean, if for example, you work as a frontline worker and you're kind of exposed to secondary trauma all day long,
Exactly.
and then you have a break, and your first thing you do is you pick up your mobile phone, you start doom scrolling on Facebook, you're going to start
More of
looking
the
at things that are
same.
similar. It's more of the same, you know. And actually,
Yes.
what does that do to our and what does that do to our view of the world? If you,
Yes.
I mean,
Exactly.
Gabor Mate said it very beautifully that trauma, and trauma, big trauma, small trauma, exposure to trauma changes our worldview. We have
Absolutely.
an
Yes.
altered worldview. We have a different paradigm shift. The world can seem like a very frightening place.
It can.
For
Yes.
example, I remember when I was a kid and there was an earthquake in Afghanistan, for example. There was a earthquake in Afghanistan. We get some reports, loads of people had died, and then you would see a week later some very grainy images of some sorry looking people, and you thought, oh, that's happening, it's happening very, very far away. Nowadays,
Yes.
our news media cycle is live from Afghanistan, the earthquake, and you
Mm.
have live images of this stuff, and so you constantly, I don't know if you have this experience where you're sitting somewhere, you're having a meal, and the BBC news flash alert goes off in five or
Mm.
six people's phones, and it's probably something inconsequential, but it gives
Yes.
you a sense that something is going wrong all the time,
Yes.
you know. And what does that do to our view of the world, our sense of safety in the world?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's how as well so many times you are with friends and in the middle of something completely different. Oh, did you saw what happened? And blah blah blah.
Mm.
And so everything shifts, no?
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
It's quite, it can be intrusive as well. We are sort of starting to reach that area of our episode, our moment
Mm.
of the episode when we want to talk about very practical
Yes.
aspects of what do we do with all of this, because
Hmm.
first of all, I really appreciate the work that you are doing with your research, and I think it's fantastic. That's why I was raising my hand to be a part of it as soon as I could. But also, I
Mm.
think probably you have some ideas about what people could do. What do you think it could be, that sort of very first step, if not being part of a research,
Mm.
at least things that people can introduce in their day-to-day life to start to, pause and think about what their relationship is with social media?
Well, what I would say is that in the same way that if you are questioning for example, let's not think about social media, let's think about more traditional addictions or addictive behaviors.
Uh-huh.
If we think about, if you're actually thinking that, considering that you need to cut down drinking, or that you need to cut down smoking, or you need to cut down whatever it is, or your intake of sugar, if
Mm-hmm.
you are thinking that already, then you probably already recognize that it is becoming, I'm not going to call it a problem, but it's becoming a problem. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also worth
Yes.
considering that the problem is not social media.
Mm.
Problem is not the substance, that is a solution to a problem. So actually, but first and foremost, considering what is this giving me that I don't have in my life.
Mm.
Okay. So just evaluate your situation. So what am I getting from looking at Facebook that I'm not getting in my everyday life? Well, it's clearly satisfying some kind of need. Maybe a need
Mm-hmm.
for connection. It may be a need to be a part of something. It may be all of that. So perhaps consider that, and then sort of monitor your use. How much time am I spending online? Most mobile phones nowadays have the screen time, and they have the ability to tell you how much time you're spending online, and then they also tell you how many times you pick up your phone. They also tell you which are the apps that you check first. Okay. And you can also look at the time. So just consider that actually your use. For example, I used to smoke cigarettes, and when I gave up cigarettes,
Mm-hmm.
I was asked to write a diary of all the different cigarettes that I smoked, and where I realized that apart from three, the majority of them I just did them out of habit. So so it's having
Uh-huh.
actually how often do I do this, and why? What do I want from it? Okay.
What
And
is the need then? No,
yeah,
is
what
that
is the
that
need?
very, yeah, that very understanding. I'm doing something here for a reason. What
Yeah.
is the need behind it? Mm-hmm.
And it might be similar. For example, if you think about it, when we go to our fridge and we
Yes.
open it and there is
Yes.
food in there, actually, so I'm hungry, what do I need? Actually, it's very different when we go to the fridge when we're hungry, because and we want to fill our stomach with food and nutrients, or when I'm actually feeling really down because I just saw I was looking at Facebook and everybody's having such a wonderful life. I go in there and then, then I see a trifle or whatever and I'll, I'll eat all of that. So it's
Yes.
actually considering that what was the purpose? Why am I doing this?
Yes.
Why am
Yes.
I doing this? But also maybe one of the things that is very important to have around our use of social media is boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Establishing some boundaries, actually, um, how often do I do it? When do I do it? And thinking perhaps about certain times of the day when you don't
Yes.
do it. Like, for example, checking your social media before going to sleep might
Mm-hmm.
be a good idea. Maybe
Not a
create a
good
boundary
idea.
like between, so I don't know, whatever time you go to bed, 2 hours before, just put it down. Don't have your mobile phone in your bedroom. Consider. I mean, one of the things that works really well for people is there are apps that can block
Yes, I was
some
about
notifications.
to ask you about that. Do
Yeah.
you want to mention them? We don't have sponsors or any of
Yeah.
that, but I think it will be
Well,
important to.
this is something that I came as I was doing the research. One of the subjects pointed this out to me, and it's an app
Uh-huh.
called Screen Zen, which is
Yes.
free. You can donate money, and they give you more options. But what it does is it blocks groups of apps in certain times of the day. The iPhone has got something inbuilt there, which is called focus modes. What you can do
Uh-huh.
is you can actually, for certain times of the days, you can block certain applications. The nice thing about Screen Zen is it actually puts a block. And when you try to, and you can unblock it, but when you unblock it, it asks you, why am I checking this?
Yes.
Gives you
And
just
actually
wait for 5 seconds.
you can choose as well that question.
Yeah,
To make it meaningful for yourself. And I
yes,
think that that was is very important because we're talking about the pause,
yeah,
no? That very moment in between where we can, just take a breather for a
yeah,
few seconds and ask why. And that is embedded in that application that I found quite useful as well.
yeah,
It's a good way of
yeah.
reminding us of that reflective moment.
But also the other side is actually, I'm not, it could sound from what we've been talking about that social media is like a really horrible thing.
Yes, not the
Technology is bad.
intention.
No, not at all. Actually, look, if it wasn't for technology and social media, or for example, look, my mum, the last few years, my mum lived in Spain. The last few years of her life, we spoke every day on FaceTime. We
Yes,
stayed in touch. She followed me on Facebook. I have friends in Spain and people that actually know what they're doing. I have contact. I've actually had some
exactly.
beautiful shared experiences online. I don't deny that that exists, but I think what it is actually is about making choices about are we
Yes,
using the technology because we are being controlled by a system of consumerism that wants to keep us occupied and distracted from ourselves, or do we also make a conscious choice? It's something that at the end of the day, when it comes, it's being programmed. We are all programmed. Okay, we
yes,
all have a program that is a part as a result of our upbringing, our experiences, our culture, etc. We live within a program. We are very
yes.
easy to be programmed humans. The difference is, do you want to live your life following a conscious program or an unconscious program?
Uh-huh.
If you give yourself time to pause and reflect and think about why you're doing this and what you're getting out of it and etc. and what your need is, what needs you're meeting, then you have a conscious program. Then you can engage, you can make a choice. You can
Exactly.
engage differently. If you have an unconscious program, then you're almost like following. You have no agency, you have no autonomy. You're just being swept into the tide of some very few people who are making themselves very, very, very rich. Did
Yeah, and the thing is that in the end, is something about really having that sense of agency
yes.
that is normally lost
Mhm.
when we are in somewhere heading into that continuum of
Mhm.
burnout, being so extremely tired and stressed, with our empathy completely under
Mhm.
stressed as
Yeah,
well, with this constant activation in the
yeah,
fight or flight, with
yeah,
the hyperactivation that will not allow us to go into those places of rest and
yeah,
recovery, in
yeah,
connecting with pleasure, for example, and in a healthy way, in a way that pleasure allow us to enjoy the beauty of
yeah,
life, of what it is to be alive, what it is to be connected, in those moments of attunement
yeah,
that we talk so much, and that a very very example of the still phase research that you talked about touch upon, no? And
yeah,
so there is a lot to gain
yeah,
when we pause and
yeah,
think about
yeah,
our connection with social media.
Yeah.
Beyond, there is the social implications of that, the political implications of that, and so on. But if we bring it into our individual lives and what is the role of social media in our personal life, I think it worth to have that look and decide, where do we want to put it? What is the position that we will give to social media and all technology in our life, really?
But it's worth considering as well that technology generally in human history has been quite a disruptive factor. For example,
Exactly.
when the printing press was invented, it led to all of a sudden everybody had access to information. It created loads of conflict and war. Probably when we discovered how to the wheel, we probably created chariots of war. When we learn how to make the fire, we probably killed the Neanderthals. So there's a level of disruption, and we have to adapt to it. And it's about learning to
Exactly.
kind of live with the new thing. But yes, what you're saying there about kind of taking time off is giving yourself tech-free days and go and find yourself a forest or a beach or a hill or a company and just go and engage with people, meeting them in the moment without having to do it through the filter of the internet. I went
Mm-hmm.
to the Himalayas about over a year and a half ago, and it was very interesting. The process when we were up there had these majestic views of the mountains, and for the first few days there was the immediate reaction was I got to take a picture and then post it on social
Yes.
media.
Yes.
Then after a few days, because one, there was no internet connection. Second, because we couldn't charge our phones, and all of that, and it just became more about being present. And I realized that actually there's no way that I'm going to capture the essence of what being in this place is like. There's no camera in the world. There's no Facebook post in the world that's going to capture what that is.
Exactly.
And you just made it very limiting. And then I felt a lot more present. But what I realized is that this is a very Western thing as well. This kind of need for validation, that my experience is only validated if 75 people like it on Facebook or on Instagram. That is not the truth.
Yeah, I mean we don't have more time today, but the impact of likes as well,
Yeah.
that's yet
Yes.
another
Yeah.
element as well. And you are making me think about such a beautiful conversation that I have had with one of my nieces.
Mm,
In this idea of getting mental
mm,
photographs, is that
mhm.
as I call it,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
the mental photography, where you can stand in a
Yeah.
place and take a picture, a mental picture of that place. And I
Yeah.
have found as well that that can be very, very useful for those moments in which you need a breather in between your day, where you can actually close your eyes and go back to those
Yes.
sensations and those
Yeah. Yeah.
feelings. Because with the beauty of who we are, of our
Mhm.
system, is that we can through our senses, we can capture so much information that
Yeah.
just a simple picture that will allow us then to enjoy over and over and over again those moments that if we take the time to really notice and be
Mhm.
present, beautiful things can happen in different moments, and we can bring back those memories very easily when we take the time to build them. So I call that mental photography,
Yeah.
and I
And even
tend to use that a lot when I'm traveling as well.
And even mental photographies and memories are only experiences in this moment. We
Exactly.
only experience, we only have this moment.
Yes,
And actually, I like to think that one day when I look back at my life, I will remember the moments of beauty, of connection, of kindness, of compassion, of tears also. I will remember the time when we were
yes.
sad together and when I was alongside other people, a lot more than the time that I spent on social media.
Definitely.
Mm.
Well, thank you so very much for today.
Thank you.
Such an engaging and interesting conversation. We just want to invite everybody to join us in these conversations. Take it to your friends as
Yeah.
well. Share this episode with your friends, your family, your colleagues.
Yeah.
And thank you for being there.
Yes. Thank
Give
you.
us give us information as well, and let us know if you want to know anything else about the work that Max is doing. So thank you so very much, Max, for being here as well with us today, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here today. And I think you'll be sharing some of my contact details through here. So please do get in touch if you have any questions you want to discuss. This is a topic that will reverberate for a long time,
Definitely.
but we can make changes. We can make choices that are different and healthier and more wholesome. Thank you.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. And we will be sharing your contacts, and everybody, if you want to find Max contacts, you can find them in the description of this episode. So thank you for being there, and thank you for listening.